Hello. Can you hear my voice?
হ্যাঁ স্যার শোনা যাচ্ছে। হ্যাঁ স্যার শোনা যাচ্ছে।
Yes, sir.
Can you see the presentation?
ইয়েস স্যার।
Yes, sir.
Okay. Very good morning to every student. Now today I am Dr. Uttam Mondol. I will discuss about the longest discussion on cholelithiasis. Today's topic there is also discussion of longest discussion on obstructive jaundice that will be discussed later. So I will start about the discussion of cholelithiasis. Disorders of gallbladder and ducts are extremely common, that you all know, and it commonly affects patients of sedentary lifestyle and obesity. We will discuss later about the various risk factor and predisposing factors about cholelithiasis. There is a statistical data here. In United States, it is estimated that about 20 million people have gallstones, with approximately 1 million new cases developing each year. Okay. Now, a little bit about the anatomy of gallbladder. I think you all know about this. This is a picture of gallbladder showing.
স্যার বলছি আমরা শুধু ফার্স্ট স্লাইডটাই দেখতে পাচ্ছি, লংগেস্ট ডিসকাশন অন কোলেলিথিয়াসিস, বাকিগুলো তো
নেক্সট স্লাইড আই হ্যাভ জাস্ট গন, ইউ ক্যান নট সি দিস। এই স্লাইডটা দেখতে পাচ্ছ না? আমি চেঞ্জ করলাম স্লাইড।
না স্যার, আমাদের স্লাইডটা চেঞ্জ হচ্ছে না স্যার। আপনি না স্যার, আপনি পাওয়ার পয়েন্ট মোডে চলে যান, মানে স্লাইড প্রেজেন্টেশন মোডে চলে যান, তাহলে পরে ঠিক হয়ে যাবে ব্যাপারটা।
এসকেপ করে দিলে এই না হয়ে যায়, বন্ধ না হয়ে যায়। হ্যাঁ, সিদ্ধার্থ কোথায়? আচ্ছা, একটুখানি ওয়েট করো, আমরা ওটাকে সলভ করার চেষ্টা করছি। আমি করছি স্যার। আচ্ছা, ঠিক আছে।
হ্যাঁ বলছি, আমি গল্প করছি।
ওরা কিন্তু ফার্স্ট স্লাইডটাই শুধু দেখতে পাচ্ছিল, যখন চেঞ্জ করলাম। এখনো কি তোরা দেখতে পাচ্ছিস না? নেক্সট স্লাইড, আমি স্লাইড চেঞ্জ করেছি।
না স্যার।
না স্যার, দেখাচ্ছে, প্রথমটাই দেখাচ্ছে।
ছোট হিসেবেই দাও, তাহলে মনে হয় সুবিধা হবে। এবার চেঞ্জ দেখা যাচ্ছে?
হ্যাঁ 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 স্যার, এবার দেখতে পাচ্ছি। হ্যাঁ স্যার, এবার ঠিক আছে।
ওকে, ঠিক আছে। So, as I was telling you that regarding the first slide, it is a common disorder of gallbladder, and ducts are extremely common and commonly affects people with sedentary lifestyle and obesity. And I was just telling that we will discuss about the risk factors and predisposing factors of gallstone formation and those things later on in the slides. And as I was telling, there is a statistical analysis that in the United States, it is estimated that about 20 million people have gallstones, with approximately 1 million new cases developing each year. Okay. Now about the anatomy. You know about the anatomy of gallbladder. It has got a fundus, body, neck. Then through the cystic duct, it drains into the hepatic duct, common hepatic duct, and then from the common bile duct. You know about this very well. And like here, it has been written that it is a pear-shaped sac with approximately 7 to 10 centimeter long. It has a capacity of 30 to 50 ml, and when obstructed, it can increase up to 300 ml. Now, what happens? The bile is formed, and it drains when we are in a fasting state. The sphincter of OD is actually closed. So bile which is formed, it got stored into the gallbladder. And when we take food, there is contraction of the gallbladder, and at the same time there is relaxation of the sphincter of OD. So when it is in the fasting state, when the bile is stored inside the gallbladder, it is most of the water content of that bile is absorbed, so bile got much more concentrated. Okay, so and with uptake or with taking of food, there is contraction of the gallbladder and there is relaxation of the sphincter of OD, and that facilitates the drainage of the bile through the common bile duct, and ultimately it drains into the duodenum. Now, some physiology, the smooth muscle in the gallbladder contract, as I have already said, when we take food, leading to bile being secreted into the duodenum. Now it facilitates to get rid of the body waste stored in the bile, and it also helps in the absorption of dietary fat by solubilizing them using bile acids. You all know, and it also facilitates the fat soluble vitamins also, the cholesterol absorption, keeping the cholesterol in the soluble form. It also facilitates that. Now, you know, now what is cholelithiasis? Now, when gallstone or collection of cholesterol, bile pigment, and or a combination of the two which can form in the gallbladder or within the bile ducts of the liver. Now, presence of stone in the gallbladder is called cholelithiasis. You know that. Now, types of gallstone. There are three types of gallstone mainly: cholesterol stone, pigment stone, and mixed stone. Now, cholesterol stone or pure cholesterol stone are not that common. Now, how cholesterol stone is formed? I will come back to this slide. This is the pathophysiology of formation of the stone. You know that I have already said that just a few minutes back, that the cholesterol part is usually not soluble. To keep that in the solution, there is micelle formation, and there is the concentration between bile salt, bile acids, and phospholipid with cholesterol. It is almost 25:1. That is the ratio. So by any fact that if there is decrease in the bile acid synthesis or there is increase in cholesterol synthesis, that ratio gets altered, and that is called the lithogenicity of the bile, and that is supersaturation of the bile with cholesterol. So that creates what? There will be formation of precipitates, and ultimately those aggregates and ultimately form gallstone. And when there is inflammatory changes, this is called cholecystitis. So there is the cholesterol stone, pigment stone. Pigment stone are mainly are much more pigment stone are black pigment and brown pigment. Black pigment stone are formed in patients, mostly in patients with hemolytic disease like sickle cell disease, etc., and cirrhosis patient also. And there is also brown pigment stone. Brown pigment stone mainly occurs in the CBD due to when the bile stasis occurs and there is infection into the bile, that ultimately leads to the formation of brown pigment stone. Pigment stone are actually cannot be dissolved. So whenever there is the pigment stone is present, we need to operate that. So there is a therapy called dissolution therapy, we will discuss later, that is not possible in case of pigment stone. And mixed stone, wherein there is both type of elements are present, this is called mixed stone.
স্যার বলছি পিগমেন্ট স্টোনে হিমোলাইটিক ডিজিজের স্টোনটা কালার কি হবে?
ইউজুয়ালি যে ব্ল্যাক যেটা আছে ব্ল্যাক পিগমেন্ট স্টোন ব্ল্যাকিশ কালার হবে, আনকনজুগেটেড বিলিরুবিন কন্টেন্টটা বেশি থাকে। ঠিক আছে, ব্রাউন পিগমেন্ট, ব্ল্যাক পিগমেন্ট, যেটা আমি বললাম এক্ষুনি, দুটো টাইপের পিগমেন্ট স্টোন হয়, একটা ব্ল্যাক পিগমেন্ট স্টোন, একটা ব্রাউন পিগমেন্ট। কোলেস্টেরল স্টোন হোয়াইটিশ, তার সঙ্গে একটা ইয়েলোইশ ট্যান থাকতে পারে, সেটা হচ্ছে পিওর কোলেস্টেরল স্টোন। ওকে,
Yes, sir.
Incidence and prevalence. In book, it is written that incidence of cholelithiasis or gallstone disease is much more common in the eastern region. Although in this slide it is written that 2% in south and 7% in north, but much more common in eastern region. And northern region is more than southern. Northern region people are much prone to develop peptic ulcer disease. These are written in the books, and with time it can change although, and it is more in women, especially is multiparous women and person of more than 40 years of age. Okay, I am coming to the risk factors now. Risk factors, you know, first thing I will come to this slide. You know this thing, that fat, 40, female and fertile. You should remember this because whenever you are going to take any history of a patient, suspected patient of cholelithiasis or chronic cholecystitis, whatever, you should remember this fact because you are often asked that why are you telling this case as a patient of cholelithiasis. From history itself, you can say this, that this is a female patient of certain age, if she is more than 40 years and she is fertile. So you can say these facts also, that from history itself, these are some positive facts you have got. Okay, so from that respect, you have should remember these facts also. Then, so the risk factors are women, multiparity, OCP, birth control pills, pregnancy, family history, obesity, then diabetes, sedentary lifestyle, rapid weight loss. Actually, all those things like birth control pills or women, that is multiparous women, these are the estrogen is the fact that which causes, the main fact is there is alteration between the ratio of bile acid and the cholesterol, that micelle formation was disrupted and the cholesterol become insoluble, and thus that cholesterol precipitate forms. So everything here, women, multiparity, birth control pills, certain things, all that disrupt, actually that cholesterol concentration increases or bile acid concentration decreases in this case. Now I will come to the symptoms part of cholelithiasis. Now what is symptoms? Symptoms means what patient feels, and signs are what we elicit as a physician or as a surgeon, what we elicit during our examination. Those are the signs, and symptoms is what patient feels. So symptoms are part of chief complaints in history taking. What patient feels, that patient will tell you. So that will be included into the chief complaint part of history taking. So patient of cholelithiasis should usually present with these symptoms, following symptoms like pain and vomiting symptoms. Then dyspeptic symptoms. Vomiting is also a part of dyspeptic symptoms. Then some inflammatory symptoms, and then some symptoms related to the complication like cholangitis, gallbladder perforation, or empyema of the gallbladder. Certain complication, if that is present, that are part of the related to the complication due to cholelithiasis or cholecystitis. So we will now discuss about the certain points of these things. Like when you are going to describe that, like in the heading of history of present illness, in this part of long case taking, all these symptoms are discussed from the beginning to the time of examination. That is when that symptoms arises first to the time, that journey of those symptoms to the time, along the time, and from at the time when you are examining the patient. So how to describe pain? Pain should be described under certain heading. Like first of all, you have to inquire about the site of pain, like where did the pain start? These are some questions you have to ask the patient to describe the pain actually. So first is site of pain, where did the pain start? Some patient can pinpoint the site of the pain where from it has started, but most of the time they give some vague history also. But you have to inquire to at least elicit, to at least find out that which organs region is involved. Then origin and mode of onset, that is how did the pain start? How did the pain start? Sometimes patient will say the pain had started suddenly. Sometimes patient will say pain has started gradually. So that depends. When sudden start of the pain, sudden constant pain, if there is patient, we usually think of something like perforation or something like that. It is constant pain and sudden onset. And gradual pain, gradual constant pain, we think about like pancreatitis and certain type of thing. Then you have to inquire of the duration of the pain, how long the pain is present, followed by the severity and quality of the pain. Then the nature of pain. Nature of pain in cases of cholecystitis or cholelithiasis, usually we say colicky pain. Now what is colicky pain? Colicky pain is occurs due to the contraction, muscular contraction of something which when it tries to overcome certain obstruction. Okay, it tries to get rid of the contents within it, the muscular contraction of a tube. So in cases of gallstone disease, when the outlet is blocked due to the stone, the gallbladder will try to contract and try to release the bile which is inside the gallbladder. But due to the stone, when it is blocked, the outlet is blocked, it will not be able to release that bile, and that will lead to the colicky pain. And later on, if it is not completely blocked, if it gets rid of the obstruction and bile get released, that pain can subside after some time. Then the progression of pain, like how is the pain progressing? Progression, sometimes it is, like I have already said, it can be sudden onset and then suddenly it has released, and sometimes it can continue as such. Sometimes it will start as at a very high note and can stay at that note. Sometimes it will gradually increase and then reach a plateau phase. Okay, so you have to inquire about all those things like the progression of pain. Then the movement of pain. In movement of pain, you have to inquire about radiation of pain, referred pain, and then shifting or migration of pain. And what happens in radiation of pain? In radiation of pain, the patient will observe pain at a different site from the original site of the pain. And at the same time, the original site of the pain is also present, and the site where the pain has radiated, that at that part also patient will feel the pain. It occurs like radiation of pain if there is a perforation of the posterior wall of the stomach or something. The patient will feel pain in the back, and that part of the site where the exactly epigastrium is also, there will also be pain. So here both the sides patient is having pain in radiation of pain. But in referred pain, what happens, the patient will feel pain at a site different from the original site of the disease or inflammation. Okay, like in cases when there will be inflammation or there is the subdiaphragmatic collection or like that, the pain is referred to the shoulder, right shoulder, tip of right shoulder, like that. Now in that case, you all know their diaphragm is like C345 and shoulder is C45. So this is referred pain. Patient will not feel pain at the side of the diaphragm, but the pain is referred to the shoulder. So patient will feel pain at the shoulder region. And the original site of inflammation or disease, there is no pain. This is referred pain. And shifting and migration of pain, you all know, like in appendicitis. What happens? Initially, there will be visceral pain. Like the appendix is inflamed. Appendix is innervated by T9 and 10, and umbilical region is also innervated by T9 and 10. So initial pain in the umbilical region due to the inflammation, that is due to the visceral component of the pain. Then after some time, when the inflammation has increased, it will involve the parietal peritoneum also. As the normal position of the appendix is right iliac fossa, when the inflammation has increased and it will involve the parietal region also, then the patient will say that he or she is having pain in the right iliac fossa, McBurney's point, whatever you say. So this is shifting pain. Then the next thing is any special time of pain. This is more important in like duodenal ulcer, peptic ulcer, you know, that hunger pain or pain due to taking of food. In cases of biliary colic or cholecystitis or gallstone disease, sometimes patient may say that pain increases on taking of fatty meal or heavy meal also, because I have already said due to the contraction of the gallbladder against the obstructing stone. Then the periodicity of the pain and also some aggravating and relieving factor. What causes the pain? What is increasing the pain? If anything is increasing the pain or anything is relieving the pain. So during eliciting the history, you have of a patient who is complaining of pain. So you have to take note of these points and you have to take the history on certain these points. Now, along with this, there is this in dyspeptic symptoms there is vomiting. Very commonly vomiting is also present as a part of chief complaint in a patient of cholelithiasis. So that's why I am including this part of the this part also among history of present illness. So how to describe vomiting? I have just written down a mnemonic here like COPD, Q2. I don't know whether it will be easy for you to remember those things, but I have just kept it in the slide. So how to remember or how to describe vomiting? First of all is content. content. What is the content? That depends upon the level of obstruction. Suppose if the obstruction is at the level of, I'm just telling you, giving you even example that if the obstruction is at the level of esophagus, then what will happen? Then the content of the vomiting will be food and saliva. If at the level of pylorus, then that food taken earlier, then saliva, then gastric juice. Okay, so these are something, but here also if there is at the level of pylorus or at the level of esophagus, there will be no bile present. Distal obstruction, there can be bile present. So content of the vomiting is important to elicit the level of obstruction, but in case of vomiting actually. Then origin is whether the pain, whether the vomiting has started before the pain arrives or after the pain, because sometimes it has been seen that due to rigorous vomiting, sometimes patient develop some muscle spasm. Okay, so pain can appear after rigorous vomiting also. So you have to inquire whether vomiting has started before the pain or it has started after the pain. Then the progression of the vomiting, like in gastric outlet obstruction, patient gives history of progressive vomiting. Then duration, how long the vomiting is occurring. Then how frequently the vomiting occurring, that is the frequency of vomiting. And then the 2Q, that is quantity, the amount, and the quality of the vomiting. Okay, so whether there is blood mixed or not, you have to take this into account also when taking history or when elaborating a history of vomiting. Okay. I have not included other parts in abdominal examination. There are certain other parts also, as I'm mainly discussing about the cholelithiasis part. That's why I have kept pain and vomiting description in my slide. So in dyspeptic,
Sir, why there will be vomiting in case of cholelithiasis?
Actually, there will be vomiting in case of cholelithiasis due to inflammation. There will be reactive spasm. Inflammation of the gallbladder. The gallbladder and stomach are in close proximity. Due to, if the inflammation is much more, this can lead to widespread inflammation that can lead to reactive spasm of the stomach. Okay, that's why the patient of acute cholecystitis usually sometimes present with vomiting. Yeah. Understood?
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Now in dyspeptic syndrome, apart from vomiting, patient may give history of heartburn, belching, bitter taste, and loss of appetite also. And inflammatory syndrome, patient can have history of fever with chills and rigor. Now remember chills and rigor. Chills and rigor is actually a feature of cholangitis. So a patient of simple cholelithiasis rarely gives you features of cholangitis. But remember chills and rigor, whenever a patient gives you a history of fever with chills and rigor, you have heard chills and rigors in malaria. But when taking history of a surgery patient, you have to at least remember two things. Chills and rigor in surgery patient usually present in biliary sepsis and in urosepsis. So patient of biliary sepsis and patient of urosepsis, these two types of sepsis can present with fevers with chills and rigors. Okay, so this should also be included in the history. Now there are some, we have already discussed some risk factors. I have included this because I haven't included certain things. Obesity was part of the risk factor slide, but you should also take note of various drugs like clofibrate, cholestyramine, those drugs history. Clofibrate is a lipid lowering drug. Ileal disease and ileal resection. Actually, ileal disease and ileal resection, there will be malabsorption, the enterohepatic circulation will be disturbed, and there will be decreased reabsorption of the bile acid. So bile acid pool will be decreased, and this can lead to decreased bile acids and supersaturation of the bile with cholesterol. And this is a altered enterohepatic circulation I have just mentioned, and some genetic predisposition can also be present. You have to take note of that also. So those risk factors and predisposing factors which I have discussed is to be kept in mind during further history taking, which includes like past history, personal history, family history, treatment history, and history of allergy and drug Okay, so like in women, you have to take history of obstetric, gynecology, obstetric history, family history. Okay, so you have to take those history, keeping in those risk factors and predisposing factors in mind, so that you should include all those things in the history. Now we will
স্যার
come.
একটা কোয়েরি ছিল। হ্যালো স্যার।
Follow.
স্যার বলছি মানে যাদের গলস্টোন হয় মানে আফটার কোলেসিস্টেক্টমি তারা তো কোলেস্টাইরামিন টাইপ অফ ড্রাগ খায়, তাহলে ওটা প্রিডিসপোজিং ফ্যাক্টর কেন?
Predisposing factor কেন? কোলেস্টাইরামিন অ্যাকচুয়ালি কোলেস্টাইরামিন যেটা করে বেসিক্যালি এটা ওই সেম জিনিস বাইল অ্যাসিড যেটা কনসেন্ট্রেশনটাকে এটাতে সেটা কমিয়ে দেয়, ঠিক আছে, বাইল অ্যাসিডের পুলটাকে কমিয়ে দেয়।
ওকে স্যার।
Acha. Now about the physical examination. Physical examination includes, no, you all know, the general survey, local examination and systemic examination. So in cholelithiasis patient, you will examine actually the local examination of the abdomen, and systemic examination includes all other systems apart from the abdomen. So this is true for every other system also. So local abdominal examination, you know that it has got 4 parts: inspection, palpation, percussion and auscultation. This picture is showing that abdomen should be divided into the 9 quadrants by 2 vertical and 2 horizontal lines. You know about the transpyloric and the transtubercular plane. I am not going to in details how to draw the transpyloric plane and how to draw the transtubercular plane. Okay, so abdomen is divided into these 9 quadrants. These are the, one is right hypochondriac, 2 is epigastric, 3 is left hypochondriac, then right and left lumbar, 7 and 8 is right and left iliac fossa, then umbilical and hypogastric. Then examination should be done under good light and warm surrounding. It should be done usually in supine position with head supported by pillow and expose abdomen from the xiphisternum to symphysis pubis. Now in examination, we look for the shape, skin and subcutaneous tissue, umbilicus, movement of abdomen, any obvious swelling and hernial size. You know that I am just discussing this. Now in shape of the abdomen, normally it is flat or slightly scaphoid and symmetrical. Abnormality usually is distended. Now causes of distension are these 5 F's like fat, fluid, fetus, flatus and feces. And if there is localized distension, if that is symmetrical, then mostly it is found in small bowel obstruction, and in case of any organomegaly, there can be asymmetric or localized distension of the abdomen. Then about the umbilicus, normally it is placed almost in the midline, joining the tip of the xiphoid process to the symphysis pubis. Usually it is retracted and inverted, and abnormal in obese patient it can be shrunken, and in ascites it can be flat and everted also. You should also look for the movement, like in normal respiratory movement is equal in every quadrant, and in localized limitation is indicative of subjacent inflammation. If there is inflammation in certain site, there can be localized limitation of the movement of abdomen. Look for any visible pulsation, and whether that if pulsation is present, you have to differentiate whether it is transmitted pulsation or expansile pulsation. And in skin and subcutaneous tissue, you have to look for stria, scar marks, pigmentation, or any superficial veins. You see there is stria marks, there is scar marks, and there is superficial dilated veins picture. Now in palpation, it has got 2 parts, superficial and deep palpation. Now routine palpation should be carried out with the flat of the hand, using mainly the flexor surface of the fingers, and forearm should be in horizontal plane so that the fingers lie flat of the abdomen. You know that it has been written, it is written in the books also. Now to avoid the rigidity and guarding of the abdominal muscle, ask the patient to flex hip and knees, and advise the patient to breathe quietly and deeply with open mouth. And in winter, keep clinician hand warm by rubbing the hand each other, then start palpating the farthest from the site of the disease. The site, if the site of the disease in the upper quadrant, then you start palpating from the lower quadrant. Now keep an eye on patient's face to know his or her reaction. Now various tender points. In palpation, you have to look for various tender points. Now if patient complaining of pain at the time of history, look for any tenderness over the following sites. Now depending upon the history. As I am discussing about polylithiasis, I have mentioned the 3 points here in the upper abdomen, like the gastric point, which is present in the point in the mid epigastrium. Duodenal point, it is in the transpyloric plane 2.5 cm to the right of the midline. And gallbladder point, it is at the junction of the lateral border of right rectus abdominis and the tip of right ninth costal cartilage. If you are asked about this point, various tender points in examination, then you should be careful about the site actually. Most of the time you forget about the site. Actually here the right ninth costal cartilage, right rectus abdominis. In case of McBurney's point, right sided spine umbilical line, you often forget to tell those things. These are easy things, but you should actually remember to mention the anatomical site. Then one important thing is Murphy's sum. Now to elicit tenderness in cholecystitis, one may place the right hand at the gallbladder point, and then patient is asked to take deep breath in. The gallbladder descends and hurts the examiner's finger, and the patient will immediately wince and with a catch of breath if the organ is inflamed. That is a sign of acute cholecystitis. Now the next two thing is important. Next line is important. You should always look both sides. Should be similarly examined to note any difference. In cholecystitis, the right 8th rib becomes tender compared to the other side also. This should also be noted. Now here is a picture how to elicit Murphy's sign. Now you can see this. The patient, the examiner has placed his hand in at the side of gallbladder point, and the patient is asked to take deep breath, such thing. Now in this picture you can see that the examination is done in sitting position. If this examination is done in lying down position, then that is called the Moynihan's method of eliciting Murphy's sign. So it can be done in sitting position, and in Moynihan's method it is done in lying down position. Now palpation of abdominal organs, it includes palpation of other organs also, like liver, spleen, gallbladder, kidney. Now gallbladder, remember that gallbladder becomes palpable in mucocele of gallbladder, empyema gallbladder, and if enlarged gallbladder is associated with jaundice, then you should think about certain things like CA, head of pancreas, periampullary carcinoma, distal cholangiocarcinoma, and carcinoma GB also. Okay. Now when GB is distended, it can be felt as a tense globular swelling projecting downwards and forwards from below the liver, just lateral to outer border of right rectus abdominis muscle. And here the upper limit is continuous with the liver. So, and sometimes can be moved slightly from side to side. Now in percussion part, usually the normal percussion note is resonant except over the liver where it is dull. And things to be noted under percussion depending upon the patient, like fluid frills, shifting dullness, upper border of liver dullness, and then percussion of over any abdominal lump also. Now remember, in shifting dullness, you are often asked to elicit how to describe shifting dullness. Whenever in a patient, suppose in a patient your provisional diagnosis is chronic cholecystitis, you are asked to elicit the shifting dullness. The one mistake you often do, that you say that there is no, when you percuss on the one flank, you are asked to what is your finding. You say that it is resonant all the way, but actually you should get dull point at the extreme of the flank, and you should move the patient, and then you should again see whether there is any shifting of any dullness or not. So if there is no fluid is present in the abdomen, there will be a dull point at the extreme of the flank, but that shifting, that dullness will not shift. So never say that there is no dullness elicited if the entire abdomen is resonant. So these types of mistakes I have at least seen sometimes done by the whatever you people. So
Sir, can you please repeat?
during eliciting shifting dullness, what we do, we first percuss in the midline, then from the umbilicus to the one side of flank, na? And actually, if there is fluid present, we will get a dull at a point of dullness, and we usually mark that point of level of dullness, and we usually ask the patient to shift to the other side or tilt to the other side, and then we again start percussing from the flank. And the purpose of doing this is to see whether there is any shifting of the dullness is occurring or not. If there is fluid is present, we usually found shifting dullness. But in a patient like a cholelithiasis or something where there is no free fluid is present in the abdomen, you are asked to show how to elicit that shifting dullness. You will start percussing in the midline first, then from the umbilicus you will start percussing towards the flank. Then you should always say at the extreme of the flank you have noted a dullness. There will be dullness in the retropay when we go to the extreme of the flank. You have to mark that point of dullness. Then you have to ask the patient to tilt to the one side and then start percussing from the flank again. And you will see that that dullness was there and it is not moving. Understand? বুঝতে পেরেছিস কি না বাংলায় বলবো বল?
Yes sir, বুঝতে পেরেছি।
ঠিক আছে, কারণ যখন
স্যার তখন রেজাল্টটা আমরা কি বলবো?
বলবি শিফটিং অফ ডালনেস নেই। অ্যাকচুয়ালি যেটা ভুল হয় তোরা বলিস যে পুরোটাই রেজোনেন্টই রয়েছে, তোরা ভেবেই নিস যে ফ্লুইড তো নেই অতএব ডালনেসের কোনো গল্পই নেই, এটা একটা নরমালি মাথায় চলে আসে, বুঝতে পেরেছিস?
স্যার বুঝেছি।
এই জন্য এটা মাথায় রাখবি না, অ্যাকচুয়ালি তোরা ডালনেস পাবি, শিফটিং অফ ডালনেস নেই, সেটা মাথায় রাখতে হবে, ঠিক আছে? And auscultation, you have to look for a normal peristaltic sound, any vascular groove, venous hum, etc. So this is about the abdominal examination in patient of cholelithiasis. I am not going to the systemic examination or details. It depends upon your finding whether you have to add something or this is a basic thing you have to do. You have to remember these things. Now I will come to a short discussion about some investigation and management. Investigation, first of all, is ultrasonography. This is the initial investigation of choice of any suspected patient of gallstone disease. Advantage, it is non-invasive and no radiation exposure. But one thing is, it is operator dependent. It has got a sensitivity and specificity to detect gallstone over 90%. And stones are acoustically dense and produce acoustic shadow. And gallbladder thickness and perispolycystic collection can also be detected by ultrasonography. So whenever you will be asked about the next thing you will do, what will you do to the first investigation of choice or something, ultrasonography is the investigation of choice. And I have given a picture here, ultrasound examination, you can see a single calculus and with the acoustic shadow. I think you can understand what is the acoustic shadow. Okay. So this is USG picture. USG, you will see USG plate of any patient with cholelithiasis. You can see this type of acoustic shadows and stone. Now, some other investigations you should at least know something like abdominal X-ray. It is the simplest and oldest imaging modality, although not used nowadays, but very few percentage of 20 to 30% maximum cases gallstone can be radio opaque, and those cases can be diagnosed by doing simply X-ray. So, and along with that, another thing, that is if there is porcelain gallbladder, here there is calcification of its wall due to chronic inflammatory irritation. Okay, so in that patient you can detect by X-ray also. In the slide on the left side there is radio opaque calculus, you can see detected by X-ray, and on the right there is X-ray showing the porcelain gallbladder. Oral cholecystography. Now, as you know that now investigation is USG, so it has been largely replaced by USG. Now, what is done in oral cholecystography involves oral administration of radio opaque compound that is absorbed and excreted by the liver and passed into the gallbladder. The stones are noted as filling defect. Now, it is of no value in patient of intestinal malabsorption, vomiting, if there is obstructive cystic duct and hepatic failure. Okay. So this is a picture of oral cholecystography. You can see that filling defect suggesting a stone inside the gallbladder. Now CT scan and radionucleotide scanning. So CT scan for benign biliary disease, CT is not useful, very useful investigation, and gallstone are often not visualized, and cholecystitis is underdiagnosed in CT scan. So in plain gallstone disease only, CT scan is not that preferred investigation for us. And radionucleotide scanning, it is a non-invasive method and it gives you an idea about the anatomic and functional information. So what is done here? Technetium level derivative of hydroxy, the HIDA actually, hydroxyimmunodiacetic acid is injected intravenously and it is cleared by the Kupffer cells in the liver and excreted in the bile. And then uptake by liver detected by 10 minutes, and gallbladder is visualized after 60 minutes in fasting patient. So if there is non-visualized gallbladder with prompt filling of the bile duct and duodenum, that is suggested of acute cholecystitis. That is, there is blockage of the cystic duct leading to inflammation of the gallbladder, and in those cases there will be non-visualized gallbladder. Now, treatment, non-operative treatment is there. You should know about this, and one thing you should know is about dissolution treatment. There is ESWL also. Now, dissolution therapy, there are some indications like functional gallbladder with cholesterol stone. I have already mentioned during the start of stone, discussing about something about stone, that if it is pigment stone, then that pigment stone only can be removed by surgery. So functional gallbladder with cholesterol stone is an indication. Single stone less than 1.5 centimeter, radiolucent stone is an indication. And drug used are chenodeoxycholic acid for 2 years and ursodeoxycholic acid at a dose of 15 milligram per kg per day. Now, problems of dissolution therapy is long duration and results are not satisfactory. And it is in fact expensive because you have to continue the treatment for a long duration. And patient may get the side effects like diarrhea and pruritus also, and can lead to hepatic dysfunction sometimes. So mostly it is not used, but theoretically this is important. You have to know about dissolution therapy. Treatment of acute cholecystitis. In acute cholecystitis, in the book it is written that initially we go for conservative treatment, that is non-operative, by putting an nasogastric aspiration, IV fluid, broad spectrum antibiotics, etc. And later, after 4 to 6 weeks, we go for elective cholecystectomy. That can be done in open or laparoscopic. Now, there are some indications for emergency cholecystectomy also, like in empyema gallbladder, if the symptoms are persisting, emphysematous cholecystitis, or if there is perforation. In those cases, there is indication for emergency cholecystectomy. And now you have to remember that there is now firm evidence for several randomized prospective trials that early cholecystectomy for acute cholecystitis, that is, if operation is done within the same hospital admission, is superior to delayed cholecystectomy. Okay, provided patient is fit for OT and anesthesia. So nowadays we prefer to go for early cholecystectomy if it can be done within the same hospital admission. Okay, and now about chronic cholecystitis. Chronic cholecystitis, we go for cholecystectomy. Also here we can go for open or laparoscopic method, but laparoscopic cholecystectomy has been demonstrated to be safe and effective alternative to open one, and has become the treatment of choice for symptomatic gallstone disease. So you can always say that laparoscopic cholecystectomy is the treatment, but you should also know about the open cholecystectomy method. Okay, with that I will conclude the discussion of the longest discussion of cholelithiasis today. And the discussion will be continued on obstructive jaundice by Professor Shivajyoti Goswami.
Hello, sir.
Sir,
Yes.
Hello, sir. স্যার
বলছি
বলছি মার্ফি সাইন ডেমনস্ট্রেট করার সময়
হ্যাঁ
লেফট হ্যান্ড করবো না রাইট হ্যান্ড?
কি বুঝলাম না
স্যার মার্ফি সাইন ডেমনস্ট্রেট করার সময়
হ্যাঁ
লেফট হ্যান্ডে করব না রাইট হ্যান্ডে করব?
রাইট হ্যান্ডেই করব।
আচ্ছা, ওকে স্যার, ঠিক আছে, থ্যাংক ইউ।
স্যার
হ্যাঁ
হ্যালো স্যার,
হ্যাঁ।
বলছি যে যদি গলস্টোন হয়ে থাকে কিন্তু পেশেন্ট সিম্পটোম্যাটিক নয়, মানে গলব্লাডার স্যাকে আছে স্টোন গুলো, তাহলে কি মানে কিছু ট্রিটমেন্ট করা হবে?
গলস্টোন আছে কিন্তু অ্যাসিম্পটোমেটিক গলস্টোন ডিজিজ বলছিস?
ইয়েস স্যার।
অ্যাসিম্পটোমেটিক দেখ আমাদের সেটআপে তো আমরা অ্যাসিম্পটোমেটিক গলস্টোন ডিজিজের অপারেশন না করার অনেক কথা অনেক জায়গায় লেখা থাকে, বাট ফর তোদের জন্য পেশেন্টের পরিচয় চয়েস ক্ষেত্রে তোরা তো সিম্পটোমেটিক বা অ্যাসিম্পটোমেটিক যাই পাস, ল্যাপারোস্কোপি কোলেসিস্টেক্টমি হচ্ছে ট্রিটমেন্ট অফ চয়েস। ঠিক আছে, কারণ ডিসোলিউশন থেরাপির কথা তোদের বলার দরকার নেই কোনো ট্রিটমেন্টে পরীক্ষার জন্য। তোদের ডিসোলিউশন থেরাপি আমি জাস্ট দিয়েছি এটা তোদের জানার জন্য, ডিসোলিউশন থেরাপি সম্বন্ধে জিজ্ঞেস করলে ওটা বলবি। আর ডিসোলিউশন থেরাপি কোলেস্টেরল স্টোনের জন্য ইউজ করা হয়, পিগমেন্ট স্টোনের জন্য ইউজ করা হয় না। ঠিক আছে?
ওকে স্যার।
ঠিক আছে।
Now you can take a break for 10 minutes, right?